The concept of multiple realities that people live in is usually understood like something far from life and real world, sort of interaction with aliens and various non-material beings, or the matrix-like nature of the universe and the analogy to the eponymous movie. The American philosopher Ken Wilber proposed a theory that a man exists in four realities at the same time. This is an elegant and harmonious concept, yet it feels like the fifth reality should be presented there. How is it to live in five worlds simultaneously? Each reality has its own motivations and people's behavior patterns. One way or another, all five of them influence our fate. The first reality is the tridimensional material world. This is what we see around us and what is usually considered the reality. Walls, furniture, trees, lakes and rivers, smells, light. One can tell very plainly there is almost nothing to reflect on in this, the most simple and obvious aspect of our life. The next reality is the biological one, the reality of our body. It constantly gives us signals, uh, signalizing about its wishes. Our body lives its own life, though we are completely unaware in the meantime. Well, almost completely. Be that as it may, our connection with the body is pretty weak. So is our grip of it. The body's signals come in a form of intuition, gut feelings, which are often enough left ignored. We just do not notice it. Moreover, humans are in control over their bodies to a much lower extent compared to animals. You take a cute kitty, for example, which could spend the whole day sleeping and then, like water off a duck's back, it can jump up to a sky high wardrobe. If a man tries to perform the same trick, he's bound to get a whole lot of rakes and other traumas. Animal control over the body is quite tight compared to human one. This is why we are outclassed in agility, strength, and many other parameters. Despite our inclination to ignore our body reality, obviously there is no way to escape it. The body tends to make its presence felt at the most inappropriate moments. It falls ill, it suffers. Ultimately, depression is also a nasty gift from our body. The next world that we live in is our psyche. This is the reality is inhabited by the perceivable part of our ego, though there are still many aspects hidden from us. Subconsciousness lies within it as well as our past psychotraumas. The stuff that we strongly dislike to remember and often enough are actually unable to remember. Nevertheless, to a certain extent, we're still able to cogitate elements of this reality. Therefore, it cannot be denied that a person lives as well in his thoughts. Now, let's talk about the social reality. The world of social roles and interaction directly influences our life, though we don't have a way of knowing about its algorithms. There is hardly anyone who hasn't experienced a situation where you have to have a conversation with a person of station superior to your own. For instance, asking a boss about increase in salary. The person usually winds himself up about how he, being so brave, undeterred, and convincing, would enter the room and demand more payment. Like a boss would have no other options but acceding to your demands. Although, however determined a man is, after facing the boss, his ardor immediately melts away and he is not able to squeeze anything out of himself but feeble hemming and hawing. As an obvious consequence, he leaves the boss room empty handed and ends up scolding himself for such a miserable way of action. Why did it come to pass like this? Because a man had planned everything being in his own internal psychic reality, whereas the communication took place in the social reality. In that world of interpersonal interaction, all our thoughts and ideas worth nothing. There are different laws and order of things. Finally, the cultural reality. The one excruciatingly complicated that we can't describe, like the breathing air around us, like fish ignore the water it swims in. However, every piece of our surroundings is a part of a culture. Even such a trivial thing like a table can be a fanciful Baroque one from a museum. It can be an office desk from our job place or the table at someone's kitchen. These are all tables, but each one of them is designated for different contexts. Culture is a combination of symbols, rituals, signs, values, and meanings. The more advanced a person is, the more cultures intersect in his head. To some cultures, we belong due to being born in a particular place or in a certain social layer. Some cultures, we choose ourselves, being oriented by our interests. For instance, the culture of rock music, the culture of ballet, the culture of technologies, the culture of business. Every culture is a part of our life and grants us different sets of motivations. In a sense, we act not as a person, but as an element of a culture. On the one hand, we champion values of a culture we belong to. On the other hand, we strive to understand deeper cultural values. And then again, we divide people into those who shares our culture and those who do not. We mentally separate the society into us and them. And moreover, we do not notice it. We even are not able to explain why we like or dislike a person. In the line with other reasons, it depends on whether the man's culture matches with ours or not. We exist in this manifold, and every bit of it influences our life, constantly and simultaneously. Let's take a look at the situation where a guy wound up in the same room with an attractive girl. The reality of his body analyzes her in a number of ways, finds her an acceptable mating partner, and gives a signal to the man that it's time to propagate. The psychic reality starts to dig previous experience and says that maybe it's better not to do it, as in a past similar situation, he was turned down and his self esteem got hurt, which wasn't very pleasant. The social reality feels that this woman is, for example, of a higher profile and talking to her might be challenging. In its turn, the cultural reality notices that the woman is way wealthier and it's not wise just to come up to her offhandedly. As a result, the guy's psyche pieces together all this stuff and produces the most comfortable for itself decision. Something like, well, she must be a whore or a gold digger, you'd better avoid her. The guy is seemingly all right, yet his body continues suffering as the chance to propagate was passed up. The described situation gives only a rough idea about how our motivation is influenced by the realities that we live in. So, a question arises here. How the hell should we live considering the fact that we exist in the world that is completely out of our control? This world consists of many various elements that we are incapable of perceiving. The idea of faith in God comes to mind at that point. We'd better to believe in God not because he exists. We do not know that. The faith in God structures our inward universe. If a man is not capable of accepting the idea of the Creator that is much above him, then the information that I give on his channel is purely supplemental and won't have a tiny bit of influence on his life. Whereas if a person accepts the idea of God, he is granted with the opportunity to look at himself from outside. He becomes able to see all five realities together. Notably, no one of these realities is more or less important than another. Everything is bound together in a very delicate manner. Of course, this information doesn't give us the ability to exercise total control over those realities. At least we obtain an ability to make contact with all this, try to understand and interact in a way. Thereby, our life becomes more controllable. Otherwise, if we don't see it, we don't admit the influence. This aspect is left outside of our attention. And paying attention to multiple realities is the first step to make our life more steerable. Yes, it's hard and complicated, but alas.